Ladies and gentlemen, the Twin Tiers, congratulations for tuning in to the liveliest, most informative, and most controversial public affairs program in the Twin Tiers, Coleman and Company. I'm your PhD of Politics, Dr. Stephen Coleman, and we have a very special show today. First of all, I want to introduce our two prestigious co-hosts, Skye Moss, professor at Corning Community College. Skye, welcome back to Coleman and Company.
Thanks for having me.
And Rich Michelada, the executive director of the Chemung County YMCA. Welcome back, Rich, to Coleman and Company.
Thank you, sir.
And in the spotlight on today's Coleman and Company is Eric Massa, Democrat Eric Massa. Eric, welcome to Coleman and Company once again.
Good to be here.
Yeah, you're the special guest today. And Eric, will you be a candidate for Congress as a Democrat in the 29th Congressional District?
Steve, it's a very simple question. Yes, I will be and I am. And it's an honor to come on your show and declare my intention to seek the nomination of the party to carry that banner forward and to run for Congress in 2008.
And Eric, why? Why do you want to run again?
Well, this is a very important question. And in fact, probably one of the most difficult questions that my family and I have had to wrestle with. Three things propel me forward. I believe the war in Iraq is the issue of my generation. And I believe that new leadership, new strategy, and new voices are necessary. The same old rubber stamps that carry us farther into civil war won't help. I believe that the ongoing war against the middle class won't help the voters of the 29th Congressional District. We must build a new job base around new industries and new economic activities here and throughout the 29th Congressional District. And as we've all seen, the terrible tragedy of the ongoing war against American veterans continues. And we've only seen the tip of the iceberg today. Those issues and many more propel me out of retirement and back into public dominion.
Eric, some people watching might say, this man's insane. He so much time away from his family. He lost by 6,000 votes. That was close, but it's still a heavily Republican district, especially Steuben County, in Allegheny County. And the situation is that you borrowed a lot of money and spent a lot of your personal wealth. This is from Money Magazine. All told, the Massas have put more than $90,000 of their money into the campaign. This is the last campaign. You lost to Randy Kuhl in November, including $56,000 in loans. Are you insane to run again, do you think?
I don't know if insanity. Certainly I'm driven, and I believe that anyone who seeks public office of this nature has a responsibility to invest in it themselves. This was the question that my family brought to me when 4 days after the election, my son, daughter, and wife said, we cannot live with the result of the last election. We must go forward again.
Eric, my view is that last time you lost the election for two reasons. My view is the first reason is I don't think your campaign did as good a job as it could have in Steuben and Allegheny counties. And number two, the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, I don't think supported you to the extent that they should have. If you had done more work in those counties and the Democratic National Party had supported you more, I think it would have been a different result. What do you think?
Well, it's funny you bring that up because I've been spending my weekends out in Jasper and Hornby and all the places I didn't have time to get to before. And I've got to tell you, I've learned more about the working end of a cow at dairy farms than I ever thought that I would.
Because in the last campaign, my understanding is your campaign had to make a strategic decision to center things in Rochester or Steuben County. You picked Rochester. Was that the wrong decision?
No, at the time it wasn't. It's what we faced.
Well, looking back, was it the wrong decision?
I'm not even willing to say that it was the wrong looking back. We had to go to where we had the highest concentration of votes to have our resources, and that meant the population areas. And everywhere we went, we won. Corning, Salamanca, here in Elmira, throughout Monroe County. Now we have more time, and we're going to introduce ourselves to voters that didn't have a chance to get to know us before.
Skye Moss, you're up.
Well, welcome back, Mr. Massa.
Thank you.
Around some issues that obviously affect the Twin Tiers, more specifically, and we talked about the economy of the region. The I-86 interstate is going to go forward. That's been
as should the I-99, which is US 15 upgrade.
US 15 upgrade, correct. What sort of tangible benefits do you see economically for the region based upon this 86 coming?
Well, historically, the southern tier of New York has always been left behind when we saw where the thruway went, where the railroad went, where the canal went. We never got the benefits of that economic development, the way to get our goods, services, agricultural products to market. Now with those upgrades going in, we're going to see a very tangible benefit. We already are. Look at what's happening at Schweitzer Aircraft, a subsidiary of Sikorsky. There's no reason we can't increase that many, many fold. And that's the kind of living wage jobs we need in the area.
Eric, I want to congratulate you for running for Congress again. But because you're running for Congress, I just want to tell the viewers, you've recently been a rotating co-host of Coleman & Company, and since you're now a candidate, I'm going to have to give you an honorable discharge. But you're welcome to come back as a guest as you are today.
Thank you.
Rich Michelotto.
I was going to ask a little broader question first
Sure, Rich,
before
go ahead.
local. Last election, you had run against an opponent, and a lot of was said was the Republican majority of Congress. Now you're going to be running at a time where you won't have, not you per se, but that will not be one of the conditions of the political campaign. How do you think that's going to change, and what happens? What kind of an effect if there's some kind of detrimental bill or something that's against your platform by the Democrats in
That's
control?
a wonderful question, because being in Congress and running for Congress is all about accountability. And I believe that the Democratic majority in Congress has done a pretty good job to date. But remember, throughout my entire campaign, knowing that I used to be a Republican, I am far less partisan than individuals who have spent all of their life in one political party. And so for me, it's not about whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, because there are Democrats who disagree with me vehemently on free trade. I am not an open-door free trader. I think that NAFTA and CAFTA are destroying this country. And the last act of the Congress last year was to open up yet another free trade agreement with Vietnam, to Hanoi's benefit and to our detriment. And there are Democrats who agree with that, and I do not.
So, Eric, if you're elected to Congress, do you pledge not to be a rubber stamp for Nancy Pelosi and John Murthy?
Well, unfortunately, Nancy Pelosi and John Murthy already know that I don't rubber stamp their policies. That may have been one reason why I didn't have the cavalry ride in from the Democratic Party last time. But they've expanded their umbrella largely, and they understand that the theme of working for working Americans, of returning the values of Roosevelt to upstate New York, FDR, and Teddy, are critical to the expansion of our political beliefs.
I know you've been in Washington talking to people.
Yeah, sure
this
have.
time around, will the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee throw more bucks in the 29th Congressional District in support of your campaign?
Well, I don't like to make predictions, but
you've talked to them, so...
I certainly have. And let me answer this by saying the Congressional Quarterly magazine, which is one of those important political magazines in Washington, D.C. that the people who are in the know read. So there's only 15 races that are currently in play in Congress, and the 29th Congressional District in New York is one of them. And I asked them, what changed? And they said, everything.
So to get back to my question, though, do you think that the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee will throw more bucks into the district?
One of my precursors for this decision is I would not run unless the National Party leadership was with us this time.
And this time they're with you.
And I have decided to run.
Sky Moss.
Do you worry about, Mr. Massa, do you worry about any sort of campaign lethargy? Obviously, we're well out from the 08 election. Do you worry there's going to be some fatigue relative to keeping the pop, if you will, within your campaign and sustaining it over that time?
Well, there won't be any fatigue with me. And I think we've proven that over time. But our campaign for the next period of time is to focus on local elections, at least until next November. That's where my focus is. What's happening here at home? You know, we got a great mayoral race coming up, and I'm a strong supporter of John Tonello. We have a great mayoral race in Corning coming up, and I'm a strong supporter of Mayor Coco, and other local races of that nature. That's really where my focus is between now and November. After that, we're going to be focusing very much on the 2008 congressional elections.
Eric, have you declared too soon? Let's think about this. In January, the new term in Congress started. It hasn't even been 3 months, and now you're a declared candidate. Are you jumping the gun?
I don't think so, because I declared my candidacy last time the day after the presidential election.
But at that point, you didn't have the name recognition
That's correct.
that you do now. Now you have the name recognition. So, so do you don't think it's too early?
No, I think it's up to me to conduct myself in a manner that attracts people with enthusiasm to a higher standard of leadership and a higher standard of campaigning. The last campaign, the Republican Congressional Campaign Committee put almost $1 million in false negative advertising up on the air in the last 3 weeks. We didn't, and we won't. And if you don't hear it from my mouth, I didn't say it.
Yeah. Well, let me say this, Eric. I think they did. They had that little old lady from Pasadena saying, "They're going to get my Social Security."
Well, that was just false.
And then they had the senior citizens in the crosshairs. I call that political pornography. This is the national Republican
That's
outfit
correct.
that came into the district with the political pornography. One thing I'd like to see, by the way, this election is for you and your opponent not to, in the ads, talk about each other, but talk about just what you're for.
Well, if you notice, I haven't mentioned my potential opponent's name,
Right.
And I am doing my best not to.
Right.
This race is about expanded economic opportunity in the 29th Congressional District. It's about a real and different voice for strategic success in Iraq, and it's about supporting our veterans.
How about this, though? Your opponent will likely be Randy Cool if he declares that he's going to run for a third term. If he agreed with you, all the ads would simply be about what you're for, not about the other candidate. Would you go along with that?
Last time, he and I both took a pledge not to run negative advertising, and I turned around and got smacked and had to fight a battle with one hand behind my back.
So you would not take that pledge this time around?
What I won't do is fight a war unarmed, and I will not fire the first salvo.
But if in fact you both agreed in your advertising just to be positive, not talk about the other fella, would you go along with that?
As long as my opponent sticks to it, yes.
Okay.
Well,
Rich.
I mean, I think that's
Rich
easy to say, you know, and to ask the question. I don't mean to say to ask a question like that. I think where you have to have the definition by the candidates, Dr. Coleman, is what is negative, what is not negative.
I think, Rich, my view is a positive campaign in terms of advertising would be you just talk about what you're for, what you want to do, and not about the other guy. That would be positive. Nothing negative about that.
And I'd pulled out some old stuff from the old campaign, you know, and you have your Social Security ad on there. And it does not say that, I mean, it talks about you won't lie to score points, you know, implying that was the other candidate, but you didn't really say. And then there was another news release that talks about coming clean and the Foley cover-up. I mean, are they issues? They're related to issues. Is it negative campaigning? I'm not saying yes or no. I'm just saying that dialogue, you know, is always going to go on. I mean, your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that almost anyone who watched the last campaign will agree that I was smeared, and I was smeared badly with an awful lot of money and an awful lot of TV ads.
Yeah, I would say this, Eric. You were especially smeared by the National Republican Organization. Locally, Randy Cool ran ads about raising taxes and cutting Social Security, but that was about it. But the one with the grandmother and the crosshairs and the senior citizens that looked like they were about to be shot, that was a National Republican
Problem
outfit.
doctors, they were coordinated. And unlike ads like MoveOn.org that I was held accountable for, I never had a chance to talk to those people.
Okay, we have to pause for these messages. We'll be back with Coleman and Company. It's television with something to say. Eric Massa, now a candidate for Congress in the 29th Congressional District. Please stand by. I'm your PhD of politics, Dr. Stephen Coleman. Eric Massa, candidate for Congress in the 29th Congressional District. He announced officially, exclusively on Coleman and Company today. Thank you, Eric, for being back on the show as a guest.
My pleasure to be
Sky Moss, Corning Community College. Rich Mikawata, the Executive Director of the Chemung County YMCA. Eric, let's get down to brass tacks here. There are some voices in the Twin Tiers that have been very negative about you.
Absolutely.
So I want to say some things they've been saying, and if you can respond quickly and succinctly, that'd be great. Okay, first thing. Some negative voices in the Twin Tiers say Eric Massa came to this area simply because he wanted to run for office. He almost won, and he's staying here simply to run for office again. What say you?
Well, the funny part about it is we read in a blog the other day that Eric Massa was hired by Hollywood to come to Corning to run for Congress last year. My family got a big kick out of that. We never thought of ourselves as being related to Hollywood. The answer is I came here to find a home for my family. I first came here in the early 90s. I came here to settle the day after I got out of the Navy. I never in my wildest dreams thought I would run for public office.
Okay. Now we get into the discussion about negative campaigning in the last segment, and there are some that say, and I want to ask you this directly, did you ever, during the last campaign, orally or in a letter to people, a fundraising letter, call Randy Cool a creep?
Not knowingly. I understand that a staff member put an email out. That staff member was severely disciplined. It was stopped, I believe, before it went out. And I expressed my remorse over that because that's not the kind of language. That's not what I want to see happen. And it certainly didn't come from me personally.
I'm glad we're clarifying this for the viewers. Now, some viewers say Eric Massa was a sore loser. He lost the election, and on election night, he said, I will not concede until every vote is counted and the nation is watching. Do you think you were a sore loser?
No, because there were over 12,000 uncounted votes. The margin of difference at the time was 6,000, which is what it ended up as. To not count those votes is to ignore those 12,000 absentee ballots. How could anyone do that? That's not being a sore loser. That's respecting the democratic process.
Some say that when it comes to Randy Cool, your opponent last time around, that you dislike the guy and you hate him. That it's gotten what say do you?
I actually invite him to go out for drinks.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't have any personal animosity. It's the voting record and the issues that I don't agree with.
Give me two wonderful things about Randy Cool to share with the vote.
Well, I think he genuinely is from here. I think he grew up here. He was born here. His father was a physician and did a lot of good things for the community. I don't have any personal animosities. You can't make this personal.
Okay.
The minute you do, then your judgment about the issues gets clouded.
And I just want to double check this once again. If you're elected to Congress, you will not be in any way a rubber stamp for Nancy Pelosi and John Murtha.
Steve, I spent 24 years in the military. I don't know how to be a rubber stamp. That's not within me to be that.
Sky Moss.
I'm going to go back to economy.
Sure.
Obviously, the southern tier, we're really struggling to get any sort of kinetic energy moving forward here. What sort of endemic resources do you think that we have that will lend themselves to breaking us out of this?
Well, I'm glad you
have.
That is the key, and we have some wonderful opportunities on the horizon around energy, both conventional. We sit in one of the largest natural gas fields in the world. Secondly, in unconventional energy, we can literally grow ourselves out of dependence through getting on the ethanol bandwagon. I don't mean our current generation of ethanol. I talk about what's right around the corner with things like switchgrass and cellulose-based ethanol. We have the largest market for food in the world sitting in New York City. And now we have the way to get our goods to market. We can, another way of growing our way out of this, that we import lettuce during the summer from California for Manhattan is ridiculous. We can grow those truck farm foods right here. And we have an incredible resource in our educational base to produce quality, technical-oriented people for high-end manufacturing.
Rich Michelada, question or comment?
I got a question.
Please.
We pulled up your website from the previous campaign. Obviously, we don't have a new one.
Haven't even executed a new website yet.
Can't do it that quickly.
It'll be up right after the show.
What are one of the two items from the last campaign that you think are going to drastically change in your platform for the next campaign?
I don't think anything's going to drastically change, but we're going to certainly focus on what I think is key in this area, and that's sustainable economy and living wage jobs. That is what has to happen for us to move forward as a society, not only in the southern tier, but we see the same problem in Rochester with the outsourcing and migration to China of so many important manufacturing jobs. That's key.
Now, what kind of a number, because there was a local push to the city council a year or two ago about trying to establish a local ordinance for a living wage, and that had some local controversy about it, especially for the small
Well, we've
business
taken
owners.
a big step forward with a new national minimum wage, $7.15 to $7.25. That's a good first start, but you can't live on a minimum wage. $14 an hour is basically what you need to raise a family, and that's just what we see coming from minimum wage indexed for inflation over time.
Are you looking to increase the minimum wage?
I'm looking to create jobs that do that.
Okay. Michelada, Massa, very alliterative. And we'll be back with a big deal segment of Coleman and Company. It's all about Iraq, 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 Iraq. That's what it is about in terms of national politics and local politics. This is television, Something to Say. Coleman and Company, please stand by. And welcome back to Coleman and Company. It's the big deal segment. On today's show, Eric Massa has declared his candidacy for Congress in the 29th Congressional District, and we'll be talking about Iraq. That's what it's all about, Iraq, 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 politically. But first, this report from CNN.
U.S. and Iraqi forces, police and army conduct door-to-door operations, a major sweep in the Shia bastion. It is the first large-scale American presence in Sadr City in more than 2 years. A move to secure this eastern Baghdad neighborhood, a stronghold of anti-American cleric Muqtada al-Sadr and his Mehdi army.
These Sadr City streets used to be protected and policed by the Mehdi army, but now it's patrols like these, Iraqi and American, who hope to take its place.
Al-Sadr and his Mehdi commanders are thought to have fled the area, their foot soldiers keeping a low profile, avoiding a confrontation with U.S. troops for now.
There's militia groups that are here, and people say, well, maybe they're just laying low. Of course they are. And I think that's a good thing, and that enables us to stabilize the area.
But with violence flaring elsewhere in Baghdad, this day a massive car bomb, Sadr City appears something of an anomaly. Customers fill shops, children play openly, young girls stroll down its streets. The seeming new calm, the Americans say, is mostly due to this man, the operation's Iraqi commander, General Ali Ibrahim Daboon. How are you feeling about these searches? And did anyone harm you? He asked this woman. No, she says, you are like my sons, here to protect me. I asked her where the militia went. Is it safer since they've gone underground? There's no trouble here. She doesn't want to speak about the Mehdi army. Our neighborhood is quiet. Everything is fine, she says. We will arrest any terrorism group, anyone that supports terrorism. There will be no exception, says General Daboon. As the Americans set about creating a stable presence in Sadr City alongside the Iraqi police and army, they say they must share that optimism. Even in Sadr City, hope springs eternal, at least on this second day of the current operation. Jennifer Eccleston, CNN, Baghdad.
Back to Coleman and Company. Eric, you're now a declared candidate. If you were in Congress now, would you cut funding to end the war in Iraq? Would you cut out the funding?
Well, hope springs eternal, but hope's not a good plan. I don't think that cutting funding will help us operationally. What is needed is a new strategy, not more of the same. If you keep on doing more of the same, you're just going to get the same results. We need, I believe, to apply the lessons of Bosnia and understand that we're dealing with three fundamentally separate countries and treat it accordingly. But we haven't changed our strategy. That's why I was so against the George Bush surge.
Okay. Now, this is a lightning round. Rich Michelada, I'd like to ask, have you ask a question to Eric, and Eric answer quickly, and then Sky Moss. Rich?
Okay. Last time your opponent went to Iraq, you had some criticism for that move. My understanding is Speaker Pelosi and Senator Clinton have visited Iraq. What's your stance on that now?
And I think it's likewise a waste of time. I think we know what's going on in Iraq, and I don't think we need more politicians on the ground. I think we need a new strategy on the ground, and I don't care what political party they're from.
Less politicians on the ground. I think that makes some sense.
Yeah, that's a strategy.
Sky Moss.
Saturday's a big day. Syria, Iran, United States,
right.
Same room in Iraq. Do you think this is a change in strategy on the point of the Bush administration, and is it purposely quiet because it is such a departure from?
Well, I welcome it because we should have done it a long time ago.
I agree.
We should have been talking to our enemies a long time ago, if nothing else, to know what they were doing.
This is what the Iraq Study Group recommended.
That's correct.
Is the Bush administration now pursuing the recommendations of the Iraq Study Group?
Let's hope they're pursuing some recommendations other than ones coming from Karl Rove.
Okay.
And if my candidacy, other candidacies like mine, can bring that pressure to bear, then so be the better.
That's a wrap for the big deal segment, but there's a big deal coming up, and that's closing arguments. Eric Massa will be addressing the voters in the 29th Congressional District. Television with something to say. This is Coleman and Company, please. Back to the official set of Coleman and Company. By the way, Paul Lyle has a wonderful talk show weekday mornings 6 to 9, WENY radio, 12:30 a.m. and 14:50 a.m. It's radio with something to say, and for journalism with something to say, it's Bob Ralph, Mondays and Fridays in The Leader. Okay, Eric Massa, you've declared your candidacy for Congress, 29th Congressional District. Time now to speak directly to the voters of the district.
Well, thank you very much. We've seen what's been happening in Walter Reed, and it's just the tip of the iceberg. Right here at home at the Canandaigua VA, less than a week ago, they announced that they were closing the inpatient mental health hospital. And this is the facility that is most needed by returning veterans coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan, and those of the greatest generation in Vietnam veterans. It's an absolute horrible thing that's happening. It's one of the things that propelled me back into politics. The decision was made in 2004. And those who were in office at the time knew about it and did not stop it. Maybe they wrote a letter, maybe they said, gee, this is not a good idea. But they did nothing else. We are at a low point today with veterans serving in the United States Congress. Lower than ever before. Lower than even in 2006. And we need to give veterans a representation in Congress because they have been representing us on the field of battle for America's wars overseas and here at home for generations. That is one of the issues that brings me back to the table of public service yet again. I turn to you and ask you not to worry about whether someone's a Democrat or a Republican, but rather to listen to the issues and to listen to the visions of the candidates who come before you. Because when you do that, then an educated and intelligent choice can be made about what direction we need to take this country and this Congress.
Rich Michelada, closing remark? Or?
Well, in 2004, was your opponent a congressman or not?
Absolutely.
He was voted in 2004?
4 and 5 and 6. His first term was that.
But to be fair, he's come out against the closing of Canandaigua.
Well, again, I don't want to make this about negative about him, but I'm telling you,
against that. He's criticized the Bush administration
I
for that.
fought for this issue last year and was told point blank that Canandaigua would not close, and he said it would not, and now it is.
You said, by the way, this is a major thing for vets coming back.
Absolutely.
It's 8 or 9 beds, right? 8 or 9?
It's the only 8 or 9.
Okay, but it's 8 or 9.
And it's 8 beds, and they see hundreds of inpatient patients a year.
Okay. Sky Moss, quick comment.
I would just say it minimalizes, 8 or 9 bed minimalizes those 8 or 9 people in those beds who have families who are Americans who love their loved ones. So I don't think
The reason I said that, Sky, was the impression was this was a major kind of a...
It is.
For those 8 or 9 families,
but some people might get the impression that means hundreds, and it's 8 or 9 beds. And by the way, I think they should keep that facility open, and so does Randy Cool. Okay, I want to just say a final thing, and I am appalled at what went on at Walter Reed Hospital, Eric. You're a veteran. Now the rats, the cockroaches, the mice, the hospital of horrors that our folks, our brave men and women that were injured in Iraq and Afghanistan were sent to that hospital of horrors. Just incredibly horrible.
And it's just the tip of the iceberg. We are going to see unraveling in the future months stories that compound this many, many fold. And those of us who have been in the VA system, those of us who are veterans and have lived with this for our entire military careers, know it to be true.
Okay. I want to stress that you have been honorably discharged as a rotating co-host from Coleman and Company, but you're welcome to come back during the campaign and talk about the issues, Eric.
Your invitation.
You're always great when it comes to talking about the issues. Eric Massa, Democrat for Congress in the 29th Congressional District, declaring on this edition of Coleman and Company. Sky Moss, thank you.
Thank you.
Rich Michelotto, thank you.
Rich, thank you.
Good luck to you, too.
Thank you, Sky.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you for being here. Doctor?
Yep. It's been a great show. Of course, that's my opinion. I hope it's yours. Have a great day, a great week, and we'll see you next week on Coleman and Company.
Join